Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Breaking the Wildfire Disaster Cycle presentation brought to you by the CSRD FireSmart Program. My name is Len, and I'm the CSRD FireSmart Coordinator. I'm also a certified FireSmart Canada representative. I'm a structural firefighter here in the CSRD, and my role as FireSmart Coordinator is to educate residents on the principles of FireSmart, but to also raise awareness of the CSRD FireSmart Program and ultimately to help residents reduce their risk of property loss or damage due to wildfire. Our presentation content and purpose here today is we'll talk about the understanding our threat of wildfire. And I'll expand on that slightly past the traditional threat that I think a lot of us where we live and given what we've seen in the past for wildfires understand as that normal threat. But I'm going to expand on perhaps things that maybe the average person doesn't understand are actually a threat. Now, that's not designed to scare anyone. Science has shown over the last number of years, and what we've learned from past wildfires is that a number of threats exist that the average resident or community isn't aware of. And our role here is in that education component to ensure that more people understand this risk. But at the same time, I'll try to identify some simple solutions here that each of you can take away and ideally start working on your own home. But if I've done my job, I've inspired you to learn more about the CSRD FireSmart program, perhaps invite us out to your property for an exterior FireSmart assessment, or have you take advantage of other resources available to you as a CSRD resident. So our neighborhoods are at risk to wildfire. Wildfire is a threat to our community and neighborhoods. Every couple of years, the CSRD does what's called a hazard, risk, and vulnerability analysis, and wildfire consistently comes out as the top of that list as the single biggest natural disaster risk that we face. Certainly, if you live in the valley bottoms, maybe by a lake, by a river, or by a steep slope, flooding, mudslides, landslides, and other risks and hazards are present, but wildfire, when we look at a macro perspective, is the single biggest risk that we face. And the point that I'd like to drive home here today is that the time to act is well before the fire is in our backyard, or as I like to say, the proverbial backyard, where maybe that 10 to 15 kilometers away, or where we're on evacuation alert or notice. And inevitably, there's a hub of activity when there is a wildfire in the area, but science has shown that over the course of time, if we start working proactively well in advance of a wildfire, that our risk and ultimately our property damage is dramatically reduced. And I'll just say that the threat is naturally people think, well, just more fire departments, more firefighters, and more fire apparatus. And as we've seen in some very large communities in California and Australia that have significant resources in terms of fire suppression, even then they've experienced dramatic property loss with all of the resources that they have available to them. So what the wildland urban interface, what is the WUI as we like to call it? Well, the WUI is where we have structures and locations where conditions result in the potential for their ignition from flames and firebrands of a wildfire. And firebrands I'll expand on as we progress through the presentation, and firebrands we'll call embers. And we'll talk about our wildland urban interface zone here. And I think if the average person looking up here in the number 2 area would consider that to be an at-risk community, and certainly you'd be correct. It's surrounded by forest fire. Each home backs onto the forest, whether the fire comes north, south, east, or west, likely exposes those homes to wildfire. But the common misconception here is with our other area down in the center of the community is that, well, my home is far enough away from the forest, I don't back onto it, my home is likely safer than, say, these homes up here that are surrounded by forest. And I'd like to make a case that says any home up here that is built and maintained to FireSmart standard theoretically is a whole lot safer than, say, a home in the middle of town that has no consideration for FireSmart. And I'll expand on that a little bit as I get into our firebrands conversation. But the single biggest risk that is largely misunderstood with respect to wildfire damage is the firebrand or ember risk. And so when I said at the beginning of the presentation that I'd like to expand on those typical threats that we would perceive as at risk from wildfire, embers is on top of that list. And so what is a WUI fire? A WUI fire is where we have fuel being consumed by a wildfire changes from wildland fuel to urban fuel. And the best and most destructive example of urban fuel is our home. So we call that built fuels or built structures when that wildland fuel switches from that different fuel source. And so how does that happen? How are buildings ignited by wildfire? And would you believe me if I said up to 90% of damage or destruction of homes by wildfires is from embers? And I know people are going to struggle with that concept, especially when we go back to the previous two slides where we have the home surrounded by trees. And that's what our common perception of wildfire risk is. The closer I am to the forest, the more at risk that I am to a forest fire. And that makes sense. But if you'll bear with me for a moment here as we move from left to right, we have a very large forest fire here. And if you've ever been near a campfire on a small scale or a large scale fire, such as a forest fire, you have what I like to call the snap, crackle, pops. And that's where we have the heat and the expansion of those fuels pops off actual components of what's being burned. And in a wildfire, that could be branches, that could be pieces of bark, that could be large pine cones, fir cones, or actual components and pieces of the tree that, with the heat and all of the turbulence that we've got from a wildfire, those get thrown up into the air and they travel through the air and land. Perhaps that is on a combustible item on or near your home, such as dry grass or maybe a wooden deck. And then that leads to a structural fire that we have here. And so I can hear the questions now. If I was doing this in person, people are saying, so one ember that lands on my home, this little thing could potentially burn my home down. And the answer is yes, but I'll show this in a video in a moment where don't think one ember, think multiple embers, think 10, think 100, think 10,000 of these embers in an ember storm. So picture a sideways snowstorm with swirling winds, dropping hot burning pieces of embers on your property or near and around your property. And in some cases, these are really small, but in other cases, as you'll see in the video, there's some very large pieces of embers that when they accumulate on or around combustible items near your home, that they can do great damage. So the video that I'll show here is from 2016 in Fort McMurray, the Beacon Hill Fire. On May 4th, this was a terrible situation where there was a wildfire that came through Fort McMurray, and there was a number of homes in the community destroyed. And it's a terrible scenario and a terrible situation, but out of that came some dash cam footage from the vehicle that we're going to show here, of a truck that was forced to evacuate town. And from this, we learned an incredible amount of the actual damage that embers can do, and just that risk that we face from this type of this part of the wildfire. So I'll play this video and narrate it. You might hear the guy in the dash cam video talking as well. But we have an emergency vehicle going by here, long line of vehicles that are being forced to evacuate under an order. And we've got the forest fire over on the left of our screen here. And that'll come in view a little bit, but look, we got a spot fire that's happening down here. There comes that forest fire now. It's about 200 yards from our buildings here. And again, you can see the long line of traffic, but we're starting to see the intensity of that fire. Still some unburned fuels here, right, in the form of trees. But as we move further down the road, the intensity of that fire builds. You can see some chaos here, vehicles just, doing their best to get out of town. But as we start to get a little bit further down the road, you're noticing some embers that are landing on the back of this truck, really small ones right now. But the intensity and the heat, you can see the glow now from this fire is actually on the vehicles and on our guy here on the motorcycle. Now watch the move that he makes here. It's starting to get real uncomfortable for him. The heat and the intensity of that fire is everyone else is in a vehicle, but he's directly exposed to that. So now you've got another vehicle, another emergency vehicle coming down here. You can tell this is a chaotic situation, but look at the size of that ember that's on the ground there, right? So now we're starting to see some big embers thrown from this fire. We've got a little ember fire that's happening over here. Now he's really uncomfortable. You can see him making a move there with his face. More embers dropping, and our guy on the motorcycle, he's out of here. He's had enough. But now you start to see more embers swirling around, the chaos and the panic of embers and of being evacuated. But there's a little fire that's happened in here. So there's a spot fire that's formed from embers. As you can see, the flames have not contacted the home or these trees, but an ember was blown, or multiple embers blown into a pine bush here. And you can see other embers, right? These are quite big. These aren't little small pieces of fire. And so these have landed in here and have now caused a fire. But there goes a fire truck, right? We have two fires here. We have a big fire, but clearly they're on their way to somewhere more important. But I want you to pay attention to this fire back here. This one is about to get very serious. So we can see the intensity of the overall fire is reduced in about 2 minutes. But look what's happening down here. That coniferous bush, now with the winds and the intensity, has grown to a point where those flames are directly contacting the home. You can see all the embers swirling around. That ember storm is not done, but the early storm caught this bush on fire, and that bush actually ignited that home, and that home was destroyed as a result of the wildfire without the flames ever contacting the home. So I think that video does a really good job of showing just the damage that an ember storm can have to an individual home, but also to a community. And so I'll switch here now to just a picture of that scenario. And I like this one because there's our fire and the fire truck zooming by. Lots happening here. Clearly fire trucks driving by fires. We're not trained to do that, but they're obviously on their way to somewhere more important. So what's the root of the problem? And the root of the problem, you could argue, is the large stand of fuel across the street in that neighborhood. But as an individual property owner or a resident, is there much we can do right now to affect that or to change that? And the answer is probably no. But bear with me here for a moment, and we'll talk about the knowledge, or the root of the problem being knowledge. And so do you think if the homeowner who lived in this property here, or the other one where that bush caught on fire and ultimately destroyed the home, do you think if they had the knowledge that that coniferous bush in front of their home in a forest fire could burn their homes down, do you think they would have kept that bush? Is that bush that important to them? And I've been out in the field a lot and chatted with people who have great connections to trees and other items around their home. But is a cedar bush, a pine bush, or a juniper bush that important? And I'd like to think that if people know that risk, they would probably make different choices. And if you don't fully understand the risk, you can't mitigate that risk. So that leads to lack of pre-planning and lack of risk mitigation. And then we see what happens where fire department efforts quickly overwhelmed and homes are destroyed, largely because people don't understand the risk and the issues that they face as a result of wildfire. So a terrible loss for the community of Fort McMurray, but this dash cam footage has been absolutely phenomenal in saving future homes, because in addition to this and other science and research, we fully understand the impact that embers can have on property destruction. So that leads us to the CSRD FireSmart program. How can we focus on educating residents to reduce our risk of property loss and damage from wildfire? Well, we saw the result of embers and just how destructive those can be. And I'm hopefully that everyone on this presentation now is fully on board and subscribed to the program that embers from a wildfire can be very dangerous. And just to put this into context, embers can travel 10, 15 kilometers away from a wildfire, but our real danger zone there is within and around that 2-kilometer mark. So generally that's where we start to get really nervous on the ember destruction, but they can and still will travel 10, 15 kilometers from a wildfire. So we see embers. We still have homes where there's built right up against the forest. So they're in an obvious risk if there was a home in very close to these flames. that home would certainly be destroyed. So we have what's called that vegetation to structure risk, where if the flames actually do touch your home from the progressing or advancing wildfire, that's an ultimate risk, as well as then when one home catches on fire, another home catches on fire, and another home catches on fire. And that's a very simple, very simple fix to that is if homes don't ignite, homes don't burn. And so, as a result of science and dash cam footage like we've seen from Fort McMurray, there's a substantial amount of time and money being invested, largely by the insurance industry, into protection from wildfires, not only from that conductive part, but also the embers. And so this is a great picture and a study that was conducted in the US where we have a side-by-side home where one side of the home is built with non-combustible materials, has gravel around it, but still has that little wood step there. And the other home has bark. This is actually bark mulch, has cedar siding, and then likely and obviously a hole in the roof where an ember, because no flame has contacted that. So some ember has likely gotten in there and started a fire. But a prime example in a lab situation when the structure was exposed to a controlled ember storm, you can see the difference that cedar siding going directly down to the ground and what a bark mulch around your home could do versus gravel and non-combustible siding. And I certainly don't want anyone on the presentation here thinking because I have cedar siding, my home is doomed. That's not the case, but you do need to manage it to make sure you don't have things like bark mulch or other combustible items around it. And then we can assist you with creating some sort of 18 centimeter ground clearance here or flashing where if something does catch on fire, it minimizes the risk of your siding catching on fire. Lots of things that we can do to mitigate risk of existing structures, but certainly a demonstration of a built to and maintained fire smart home where it does not sustain near as much damage as the non-fire smart and combustible home does. So that leads us to the wildfire disaster sequence. So I think this is probably well understood by most people, but we have what cause of this is severe fire conditions where we have fuel and weather and topography. If you look outside, you're likely looking at a green forested hills full of coniferous fuel. What happens during wildfire season? Well, we get hot, dry weather. And the topography in the CSRD is steep hills, shallow hills, rolling hills, and valleys where we've got lots of prevailing winds, ridgetop winds, and other things that create those severe fire conditions. And then we have a wildland fire, whether it be human caused or lightning, that intensity increases. And then we have one urban fire, perhaps one home, then perhaps multiple simultaneous ignitions. And then as we saw in the video, overwhelmed fire suppression, reduced fire protection, and then many homes totally destroyed. So that's what we're trying to do here is break that wildland urban disaster sequence. So certainly we've got lots of fuel still in and around our area. We can't control weather. We can't control topography. Lightning and natural wildfires will always be a part of our environment. We can do more to reduce human-caused fires, but we are going to experience wildfire. So, but we need to stop the urban fires. And this is the resiliency with wildfire, whereas we're not necessarily going to stop every wildfire, but what we can do is stop our individual homes from catching on fire. And inevitably we hear about the miracle home that survived the wildfire. And as you could probably see in that picture where we have the side-by-side homes, it usually isn't a miracle. There's a good reason why that home survived, and 9 times out of 10 it's because nothing on or around the home caught on fire, unlike other homes in the community. So how do we reduce our risk of wildfire loss for us as individuals around our properties? And as I said earlier, solving the problem depends a lot on what we do before the fire, before we're exposed to that fire. And I think the video did a really good job of showing managing coniferous vegetation in our yards and neighborhoods is very important, particularly that vegetation in and around the 1.5 meter and the 10 meters around our home. And my role is not to cut down every tree in every yard, in every neighborhood. I live in this area as well. I love living in nature and wildlands, but some trees and vegetation is especially dangerous to us. So should we cut down every tree in our neighborhood? Absolutely not. But are some homes or some trees very, very dangerous and should be taken down? Yes. And that's what I think we can help you with. Another example of this is removing flammable debris from around our homes. And flammable debris could be anything from building construction materials. It could be the jerry can of gas with a lawnmower underneath your deck. Picture how that would hold up against an ember storm with some 2x4s, a jerry can of gas and a lawnmower underneath a wood deck. That is not going to go well in an ember storm. And one of those things that we can do during wildfire season is make sure that we have nothing flammable around our homes. And then the other part is preventing embers from contacting flammable parts of our homes. So as we saw in that picture of the side-by-side homes is a great example. As I said, if we have cedar siding, create some ground clearance. If you've got gaps in your soffit or in your eaves, we close those in or screen those in to prevent embers from contacting them. If we've got other little gaps and cracks, maybe on decks, we look to fill those gaps and cracks so embers can't penetrate them. And then finally, I've mentioned this in one of the earlier slides, but home maintenance and effective home maintenance. What is effective home maintenance that is FireSmart specific? And one very good example, if you have rain gutters, is cleaning those gutters at the beginning of fire season and anytime after a windstorm during fire season. Because what happens is wind blows cones and needles and branches off of neighboring trees. Those land on our roof and in our gutters. When it rains, it all ends up in our gutters. It doesn't necessarily drain out. Then when the summer comes around, we get hot, dry weather that bakes inside of our gutter. We get the ember storm. That material catches on fire in the gutters. We have our shingles overhanging our gutters so they catch rain, which means that when we have a fire in our gutter, we have a fire in our roof. And I can say as a structural firefighter, once you have a fire in a roof, it's a whole different situation. So just one small example of home maintenance throughout the year, but we've got many other of these that we'd certainly encourage you to consider through the FireSmart program and adopt into your own homes and neighborhoods. So how can we help and what can we do to help you understand these and other items and things that you can do to reduce your risk? Well, the first one is you as a CSRD resident and property owner, whether you're a full-time resident or a part-time resident, you can request a free FireSmart home assessment. And this is where one of us as a FireSmart rep or one of your local fire professionals does an exterior assessment of your home, helps you identify any of those hazards that are, as I like to say, lying in plain sight that you don't necessarily understand because you don't have the knowledge, but we do, and we can help you identify those and recommend mitigation items. And this is free, so no cost to you. And I can say that any home assessment that we do, it does not go to an insurance company. It does not go to anyone else but you. And it is designed only to educate you and assist you with information that you can use to reduce your exposure to these hazards. Now, the other advantage of having us out to do a FireSmart home assessment is that if we make recommendations and you implement any of those recommendations, you could be eligible for up to $500 in rebates. And that might compensate for some materials or some tools that you need to get to mitigate your risk, or maybe just compensate you for a little bit of time. But it's a small gesture that we're trying to use to incentivize residents to ultimately reduce their risk, which is good for all of us. The other thing that you can do is invite us to present to, maybe it's a community group, maybe it's a formal strata or community association, or maybe it's just a group of neighbors that are interested in learning more about FireSmart or working together to reduce their neighborhood risk. Because as science and studies have shown, a FireSmart home and then a FireSmart community is actually a fire break in an advancing wildfire. So with breaking that wildfire disaster sequence, an individual home or community can actually stop the progression of a wildfire. But the other thing that we focus on with neighborhoods and communities is become FireSmart recognized neighborhoods or communities. And this is an amazing program from FireSmart Canada that we work with community associations and groups to help them develop a plan to reduce their property risk and loss as a result of wildfire, generally through just doing some simple things. But it's a community working together, having a plan, and ultimately reducing their overall risk. It doesn't mean that you're absolutely perfect from a wildfire risk perspective. It just means that you're more educated and you're working together as a community to assist with reducing that loss. So if, let's just say, you're not interested in having us out, you're not interested in the rebate or working together with the neighborhood, our website contains an incredible amount of information. We appreciate that this is a very complicated, complex, and sometimes overwhelming issue or topic. But what we've done from FireSmart Canada, FireSmart BC, and through our own program is we've compiled all the important and relevant information. We've placed it on our website. So if DIY is your approach to this, we've put as much information as you could possibly need on the CSRD FireSmart website, which I will provide the web address for at the end of the presentation. So certainly as a CSRD resident, lots of resources available to you, and we'd certainly encourage you to take advantage of all or any of them. Now, before we end the presentation here, there is one video which I like to show because I think it does a really good job of describing the home ignition zone, and then perhaps in some more densely populated neighborhoods where those zones overlap, how residents can work together. But I think it's a 3-minute video. I'd encourage you to stick around for the whole thing, because at the end of this presentation will be some other information and contact info for you. But watch the video and just take note of some of the little tips and items that each individual property owner, as well as community rep, is doing here to reduce the risk.
As we continue to extend our lifestyles and communities into the forested and grassland areas of the country, we become more exposed to the danger of wildfire. Living where wildfires can occur puts our homes at risk, but it is possible to live safely and resiliently with wildfire. FireSmart principles are designed to mitigate a home's vulnerability by taking proactive action on our properties to reduce wildfire risks. Homes ignite due to the condition of the home and everything that surrounds it out to 100 meters from the foundation. This is called the home ignition zone. Let's check in with the residents of Aspen Street in the community of Little Blue to see the proactive steps they're taking within their FireSmart home ignition zone.
Hi, I'm Levi. I've lived in this house for over 25 years. Wildfire seasons are starting earlier, lasting longer, and are more intense. We need to take action. Residents in the community next to us were evacuated last week and suffered devastating loss. We need to take ownership of our part in the overlapping home ignition zones in our neighborhood, starting with the most critical zone, the non-combustible zone, which should be a minimum 1.5 meter non-combustible surface around your entire home. I've cleared the vegetation and combustible material around my house down to bare mineral soil, including combustible debris from under my deck.
Hi, I'm Sandy. Priority Zone 1 is between 1.5 and 10 meters from your home. To create a landscape that will not easily allow fire to reach our homes, my husband and I moved our renovation materials out to Priority Zone 2, breaking them into small organized piles. Firewood piles have been moved to Priority Zone 2 and patio furniture into the shed. We also plan to incorporate some fire-resistant landscaping products into our yard.
Howdy, my name is Colin. I've been working in Priority Zone 2, 10 to 30 meters from your home. The trees of the vast forested landscape that our homes back onto need to be pruned to 2 meters to prevent fire from climbing the trees. Keeping fire on the ground will make it much easier for firefighters to manage.
Hi, I'm Alex. I've been busy in Priority Zone 3, which is 30 to 100 meters from my home. To create a fire break, we've hired a professional arborist to come in and thin out the thick spruce trees we have in Zone 3. I'm also going to prune the remaining spruce trees up to 2 meters, and clear the dead and down woody debris. In subdivisions like Aspen Street, priority zones can overlap. It is important to talk to your neighbors and identify ways that you can work together.
We've all taken one small action on our properties, but we need to do more, and we need to do it together. I say we contact our local fire department and see what else we can do.
Agreed.
So thanks everyone for paying attention and staying tuned for that 3-minute video. I think it does a really good job of outlining the home ignition zones, overlapping zones. And I'll just make a comment there. I get this all the time about moving the firewood away from the home. We have a number of homes in the CSRD where they heat all winter with firewood. And no doubt throughout the winter, you want that firewood kept close to your home. But if you're going to cure your firewood, we recommend that you cure it away from the home. Because if you've done your job properly with curing that firewood, it's drying out, it's becoming easy to burn throughout the winter, but exposed to embers and all the heat that firewood is designed to create throughout the winter for you, imagine what the damage that could do to your home if all of that heat was over a 3 to 5 minute period. So that's the end of the presentation here. I will end the recording after these last few little comments here, but I'd like to direct everyone to our website, csrd.bc.ca/firesmart. This is where you can get all the information that's relevant from a FireSmart perspective. You can also request the free home assessment. If you prefer to email firesmart@csrd.bc.ca, that will go directly to me. 1-888-248-2773 is the direct line to the CSRD reception. You can leave a message and myself or someone else can call you back if you have any questions. But if I can leave you with anything, it is hopefully the inspiration to act now. Don't wait until there's a wildfire in our area, or don't wait until it's an urgent issue where we need to take action. And the other thing is we want to help. And I think with the resources that you have available to you as a CSRD resident, I'd encourage you to take advantage of any or all of those resources and work together with your neighbors to reduce your risk. I will stop the recording, but if there's any questions, people can just ask me those through the comment in the chat section. And then certainly this recorded video will be on our website. And if anyone else does have questions, there's any number of these channels up here. They can contact us. So thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time here and look forward to working with you on making our community safer.